The nation's governors are in town this weekend for their annual meeting. And we're joined now by Maryland Democrat Martin O'Malley, Virginia Republican Bob McDonnell, plus Arizona Republican Governor Jan Brewer, and Democrat John Hickenlooper from Colorado. Governors, it's great to have you with us. Thank you for joining us.
Good to be with you.
I want to start with you, Governor O'Malley and Governor McDonnell, because I understand you had a conversation yesterday, and you two, despite representing different parties, are trying to figure out some way to resolve this sequester across-the-board spending issue. What do you have to tell us?
Well, Governor McDonnell and I talk fairly often, actually, about issues that we share. And on both sides of the Potomac, we sit in the middle of a corridor of science and security. And this sequester stands to wipe out a lot of hard-fought job gains in Virginia and in Maryland. So for whatever our differences might be, we understand that this is an economic threat. This is going to hurt a lot of moms and dads in our region who go to work every day working in places like NIH and NSA and also the people that work in the private sectors that support our federal government in these important missions. So both of us hope that Congress will come together and find a way to avoid this sequester.
What's your message to Republicans in the Senate and the House, Governor McDonnell?
We got to get the job done. Major, it's been 18 months. The sequester was put in place to be a hammer, not a policy. And now here we are just a week away from getting it done. I think our major concern that Governor O'Malley and I have, because we're such a defense state, 19 installations, 25,000 defense contractors in Virginia, is you have to cut. Because we're in bad shape, $17 trillion almost in debt now. But don't put 50% of the cuts on defense, our men and women in uniform, while we're still fighting a war in Afghanistan. That's not the right way to balance the cuts that are necessary. So find another way to do it and get it done now.
What are you two going to do in a unified way this next coming week? Because there's going to be a debate in the Senate, and if that's not resolved, these cuts begin on Friday.
Well, we're both going to be pushing our congressional delegations.
Will you be trying to reach out to the president?
Well, sure. I mean, we're going to meet with the president tonight. We're going to be meeting with him tomorrow, and no doubt this threat to our jobs recovery will come up. I mean, all of us have to balance budgets every year, Major. And in Maryland and Virginia, we've made the tough cuts. We've made the tough choices. And I congratulate Governor McDonnell. He just came through a tough legislative session where they applied a balanced approach. And that's what Congress needs to do, a balanced approach that allows us to create jobs and expand opportunity.
I'll get to the other two governors in just one second, but Governor McDonnell, while you're here, that package that you just put through the legislature has tax increases. Is anything you're saying to Republicans in Congress who are currently opposed at this stage after having raised taxes in the fiscal cliff deal to lighten up on that? Put taxes on the table or loopholes or something to get this resolved?
Well, I would say before we approach this transportation bill this session, we had major spending cuts. We've had other tax decreases. We've done a lot of things to get us to be a very competitive state for job creation, economic development, but we had a different approach when it came to infrastructure. What I would say, and Governor O'Malley and I agree, and we're working together to make sure that we don't have the defense industry hurt this badly, and 200,000 jobs to my state over 10 years. And I would say you can't solve the budget crisis if you don't take on Medicaid and Medicare and get serious about things like Simpson Bowles and actually cutting spending. And so I would say that's where they got to go first. And we've had 18 months, and the president's got to lead. Congress has got to work with them and get it done.
So no tax increases?
Well, that's the solution is up to Congress. I'm just saying don't put all the burden on the states and the military. You guys figure out how to get it done.
Governor Brewer, two questions for you. One, some of the things the administration has said, the implications of the across-the-board spending cuts would be fewer Border Patrol agents. Do you worry about that in Arizona? And I have an immigration question, but first I want you to tackle the...
Yes, absolutely. There's been so much uncertainty exactly what the impacts are going to be, so we have been looking very diligently into our agencies about where and how we can cut. It's about $140 million budget cut if it goes according to what we have been presented and what we know today. But certainly the security of our border is very, very important, and it is cutting the
with
Border
that
Patrol agents.
Affecting your constituents, is your message to Republicans, give in on taxes, resolve this, protect your state from these budget cuts? I
think they need to resolve it. I think that they should have done it a long time ago, but they needed to do it, and it has to start with leadership from the top. This is unacceptable to the public. The uncertainty and knowing of what's taking place. We know that given the cuts, it's going to hurt us as budget people that we have to deliver those kinds of services. But more than that, it's going to really hurt our economy, because Arizona too is, we've got Raytheon there, which we don't know exactly what that's going to do, but it's going to cause a lot of job results. And we, as a Republican governor that inherited the largest budget deficit in the country, and we resolved that. And now here we got the federal government over there, in my opinion, not doing their job, and then it's left to the states to solve it.
Is it a greater danger for you to deal with these cuts, or would it be a greater danger to the economy for Republicans to give in on raising taxes? Which do you want to see?
You don't give me very good choices.
Well, when the president talks about balance, that's what he's trying to present, and that seems to be the cutting edge of where this debate's ultimately going to get to.
Well, as a governor from the Western state, it is difficult, really, for me to be honest and say, okay, I know all the answers, because I don't have all the inside baseball games, and for me to sit here and say I know every detail of what they're dealing with there. We do not like taxes. We don't like increase in taxes, but we know we have to be pragmatic. We know that there has to be some type of compromise, but dang it, they need to get the job done. They don't need to leave the public out there hanging.
Sounds like a qualified yes. Governor Hickenlooper, what does this look like from the state of Colorado's perspective? A lot of federal dollars run through. There's interior involvement in Colorado as well. What does this look like to you? What are you most concerned about, and what's your message while you're here in Washington?
Well, I think it's the same as all the governors, that we need to have a balanced approach to this. We had breakfast this morning. All the Western governors had breakfast with Secretary Vilsack of Agriculture and Secretary Salazar of the Interior, and they laid out in pretty graphic detail how many food inspectors would be cut, not just in Colorado, but across the United States, in terms of making sure that our food is safe. You look at some of the cuts in public safety. If you're going to cut the FBI, and you're going to say, all right, well, we're not going to cut the FBI. Where are you going to get that cut? You're going to cut the U.S. Attorney's Office, the Bureau of Prisons. Going to cut Border Patrols. What has to happen is there's got to be, and Congress can do this. If us governors can work together so well, I think Congress can do it, and just figure out the right balance.
A simple yes or no question to all four of you, and we'll start with you, Governor, and we'll go around this way. There is some suggestion that maybe the administration is overplaying, over-dramatizing what's going to happen if these spending cuts do take effect. Is there any doubt in any of your governors' minds in your states that what the administration is saying is real, the effects will be negative, and felt by your constituents in relatively short order? Governor Brewer?
I think it's unpredictable. I do believe that we're going to see, if they don't get their act together, we're going to see some types of cuts. I don't know if they're going to be all that dramatic in the period of time. They've got to deliver a budget to us too in a few short weeks. They just need to get in there and do what they're elected to do and get it done so that we can deal with it.
Governor Hickenlooper?
Yeah, I think the effects will be significant, and people will feel them.
You do?
Yeah, absolutely. You look at things like education. You're going to cut Title I funds for, these schools are going to have a very short period of time to figure out, just like Secretary Duncan said. And are you going to cut IDEA, which supports our, kids with disabilities?
Right.
These are difficult, they're impossible choices.
Governor McDonnell?
Yes.
There's no exaggeration. This is all real, and it's all going to happen.
Well, no,
and
I think
be bad.
the president's overplaying his hand to force people to try to raise taxes. He ought to be leading and cutting spending. Everybody knows that's the problem. But he's right that, particularly with defense, and that's where Governor O'Malley and I really agree on this, because we're such heavy defense-oriented states. 50% of the cuts to the defense sector, which is only about 12% of the discretionary domestic spending, while we got kids in Afghanistan. That's what's wrong about it, and that's why he and I think that they got to find a different formula. Defense has got to be cut like every, but don't put it on our kids in uniform.
Less than 10 seconds.
These are job-killing cuts, Major, and we have to find a way to avoid these. We cannot cut our way to prosperity. We need a balanced approach to continue our jobs recovery.
We'll continue this conversation, and we'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back to Face the Nation. I'm Major Garrett, filling in for Bob Schieffer. We're back with Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley, plus Arizona Governor Jan Brewer, and Colorado's John Hickenlooper. Governor Brewer, I promised you an immigration question, so here it is. Do you support your fellow Republican Marco Rubio's efforts to draft and put before the Senate a comprehensive immigration reform, a bill he's drafting with Democrats like Charles Schumer and Bob Menendez?
Well, I think that it's wonderful that everybody's coming together in cooperation to find a solution, and I'm very, very appreciative of Senator Rubio in stating and encouraging that before anything is done, that we have border security established, and then I think we can move forward.
That's one answer to the question I want to put before both of you, two Democratic governors. The Senate framework, put together in a bipartisan way, calls for an independent commission to report to Congress that the border, in fact, has been secured before the other processes toward legalization begin. The President's draft legislation does not include that. From you two governor's perspective, should this ultimately have a commission that tells the country the border is secure before legalization begins? Governor O'Malley.
I think you have to do both at the same time. I don't believe that you can do one absent the other. I mean, they both go together, and we need to create a path to citizenship. We need to accomplish comprehensive immigration reform, and I think it's a real bright spot that we have the opportunity to come together and actually solve this problem.
So what would be the purpose of a commission, then, to verify that if legalization is already beginning?
I don't know. I suppose it might give some greater assurance to those who need to go home and say, hey, I've been tough on the borders, and I'm all about law enforcement. So whatever that mix it requires.
So it reads like a political fig leaf. Is that what you're saying?
I think there is reality. I mean, I think we do need to provide better border security, but I think that also we need to accomplish comprehensive immigration reform. It'll be a lot easier to secure the borders and also to provide the correct level of enforcement if we allow hardworking people who have lived their whole lives in the United States to pay their taxes and live in a full light of society and be citizens. You know, but it focuses the effort of our immigration services.
Governor Hickenlooper, are these things joined, or should one necessarily be dealt with before the other?
Well, I agree with Governor O'Malley, of course. But I don't have as much of a problem doing the border security first. I mean, they do have to be done together. But in the end, I mean, you've got to really focus on the whole problem at the same time, right? You've got to look at employment identification and making sure that 20 years down the road we're not going to get back in the same position. That requires not just a secure border, but an employment verification system that's rigorous and a willingness to stand up and say, all right, everybody plays by the same rules, and everyone hires, people that are supposed to be hireable.
Governor Brewer, how does all this sound to you? I see you shaking your head.
No, we've been down this path previously in trying to address the issue about whether we can do this together. Comprehensive immigration reform and the security of the border. We need to secure our border first and then move forward. I feel very, very strongly about that. I think the people, certainly of Arizona, agree with that. And I think that's going to be a stumbling block of trying to get something done. A president whom I admired promised the border security to us, and when they moved forward last time, it didn't happen, and we are still faced with a very unsecure border. I was just down at the border. It is not secure.
You mentioned in a recent interview that you believe drug cartels are essentially waiting along the border cross.
Major, I know. I mean, I saw them. We see them all the time. You can talk. I visually saw them. They're staging, and they're staging during the day, and they come across at night. Our fences aren't complete. The Border Patrol is too far north. They need to be closer to the line, and we certainly need more National Guard on the ground. We have National Guard in the air, but we need more National Guard on the ground. And people are living down there in fear of their lives and fear of the safety of their families, and we are the recipients of all the crime that is taking place: the extortion, the human trafficking, the prostitution, the cost in jails. It's a bad problem. And then to sit in Arizona and listen to people 3,000 miles away making decisions affecting our lives on a daily basis, people that have lived on those ranches for hundreds of years, seeing what's taking place to their livelihood is wrong. It's wrong in America. It's wrong for Arizona. We need our borders secure. We need border security.
I want to shift the conversation to gun control legislation. Governor O'Malley, you're working through something in your legislature that very much parallels what Virginia did after the Virginia Tech shooting. Why did it take Maryland longer to get to the idea of putting those in mental health categories unable to purchase firearms, and how successful are you going to be getting that through the legislature?
Well, we have a comprehensive bill that's working its way through the legislature that involves reinstating the assault weapons ban, requires licenses for the purchases of handguns, also improves school security, and also tightens up the mental health interventions and crisis intervention, there is always a balance to be achieved when it comes to this mental health issue. We don't want anyone who shouldn't be in possession of a gun to have one that has, that is troubled with, mental health issues that could lead to the death of other individuals. You also don't want to discourage people from going to seek treatment. I believe that we are getting to a point in this bill where ours will very much mirror what Virginia has done. And I suppose it was the tragedy at Virginia Tech that propelled Virginia to move forward on that more quickly than perhaps we had.
Governor Hickenlooper, I'd like to ask you, before Washington and the Congress now, the President's three dominant ideas: assault weapons ban, rather than the one that expired in 2004, a ban on so-called high-capacity ammunition magazines, and background checks, universal, or as close to that as can be achieved. What's the top priority for you? Do you think all three are an absolute must-have, or could you live for just one or two of those ideas?
Well, certainly our highest priority has been mental health issues and addressing that. So
outside of gun control entirely?
Yeah, just to make sure that you don't put guns in the wrong hands, and that we beef up. We have 5 24/7 emergency centers. We have the opportunity to make sure that people would do harm to themselves or to others don't get guns. I think universal background checks are the highest of those three remaining, just in the sense that, we did 320,000 background checks just through gun dealers and gun shows in Colorado last year. And of those, we found, people say, well, criminals aren't stupid. They're not going to go through a background check. Hey, what a surprise! They are stupid, right? Mm-hmm. So we intercepted over 1,000 felons with criminal records, most of them violent, 600 burglars, 40 people have been either accused or convicted of homicide. We ended up arresting over 100, issuing arrest warrants for over 100 individuals because they signed up for the background check. We want to expand that, and it is, it's an inconvenience for people, but we only cover about 60% of the transfers now. We want to get to 40%.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay, that's right. And Governor Malley, before I let you go, you picked a fight with Governor Christie in New Jersey recently, saying that he sort of overplays his reformist credentials on pensions and that he takes too much credit for that he deserves. His people say he's bipartisan and he deserves all the credit he gets. What's your beef with Governor Christie?
Well, I believe in doing things that work and making government work and effectively expanding opportunity, creating jobs, reducing violent crime. I think I was asked what I think about Governor Christie's innovations in government, and my response was, what innovations? The unemployment rate is higher now in New Jersey, one of the highest in the country. His actions have led to the downgrade of their bond rating in a lot of the municipalities, and I just don't see where there's a comeback happening in New Jersey. If anything, they've fallen back, and that's not effective governance.
Sounds like a conversation that we might begin to hear in 2015 and 2016. Governor Malley, great to have you with us. Governor Hickenlooper, Governor Brewer, thank you very much, and we'll be back in just a moment.